Hi, everyone. I am getting us started on our FBA virtual training. There's a 4-part series to this, so if you're just viewing this first one, if you haven't been assigned all 4, talk with your administrator or special ed coordinator and find out how you can experience the full FBA virtual training experience. Today, I'm going to talk just about the purpose of the FBA, what it is. Some of you might know some of these things, but it's always good to refresh. Okay, I thought maybe I was muted, but it's my presentation that is muted, which is fine. Okay, so I'm going to go into present mode here, and hopefully that enables you guys to see it a little bit more. As you guys, most of you know, I'm Courtney Verrell. I'm a behavior analyst with Rum River Special Education Cooperative. I work out of Rum River North, and I serve this year Princeton preschool through 8th grade and Malacca preschool through 8th grade, as well as the Rum River North program. Oh, I also serve the Princeton Onward program too. So if we think about what is a functional behavior assessment, some people in the past have just tried to get this assessment done and out of the way and just put it in a file as just part of the evaluation. But what we want to be able to do is use it to determine the function of the behavior and the factors that maintain that behavior. And we're going to do that by looking at several different sources of information and data. And we're going to, in our talk right now, look a little bit about what is a function. It basically is the reason for a student's behavior. Anytime we act or behave, there's some reason for it, right? Whether that's some sort of innate or primal need, such as like hunger or sleep. Those things are kind of more directly motivating to us, right? We call those primary reinforcers. But there's also secondary reinforcers, things that in a student's history of their life or learning history have been exposed to that get paired with certain experiences or things that make them reinforcing or not. So what are the possible functions of behavior? I made this little chart. I think it helps kind of organize a little bit and highlight how what is maybe somebody's trying to get in one situation, they might also be trying to, another person might be trying to avoid that thing, right? So what we have here is, we'll start with attention. So a student may be engaging in a particular behavior to gain attention. That could be from peers, staff, and let's say they are refusing to do work. Well, maybe through refusing to do work, they find that they get a little bit more one-on-one help from a staff member. And so this is rewarding to them, and so they continue to engage in that behavior in the future to continue to get that one-to-one attention. So maybe they're trying to obtain it. Another student might be trying to avoid or escape attention. They might be somebody who hides and doesn't really want to talk to anybody. We also have students who get their work done so that they don't get any unnecessary attention. They just kind of want to fly under the radar. So we have all different sorts of motivation for attention or to not have attention on us. And I know a lot of times this is a little easier to see in schools, and it's sometimes kind of the default answer as to why a student's doing what they're doing. But we can look a little deeper than that with some of these other functions. The main idea here is that a student is engaging in a particular behavior not to necessarily annoy someone else, unless that's the particular thing that's reinforcing to them. They're doing it to get something, right? To gain something or avoid or escape something. They're just, the way they're going about accomplishing what they want isn't super effective. Well, it might be effective, but it's not really adaptive or appropriate. So we always say what they want isn't bad, it's how they're going about getting it. So the next category here is tangibles or activities. So a student may engage in a behavior like running and grabbing an iPad to get access to it. They may have a fit until they get what they want. We all know that some of you guys are parents, and sometimes you just want the fit to stop, right? So you give in and you give them the thing that they want. And over time, if that sequence is repeated, what can happen is now we're building a learned behavior of how to get what we want through misbehavior. And essentially taking the adult to their limit until they say yes. Another function might be that they're avoiding or escaping tangibles or activities. And this is often the case with a particular activity, like a subject or a school assignment that they don't like. And that could be for a variety of reasons. Maybe they just plain don't like it. It could be that they've had negative experiences in the past with it. They haven't felt successful with it yet. And so they just prefer not to do it. And so they'll act out in certain ways in order to avoid the activity. So I have a student who would, in order to escape the worksheets, they would start by pushing away their desk when the worksheet would come their way, as if pushing the desk away, the worksheet would then appear on the desk, but the desk is further away, so it's not his. Two, I have other students who will run out of a classroom if that worksheet's presented. So it doesn't always make sense to us, because I think as usually competent adults, we think it's just a worksheet. Why is a worksheet aversive? And that can be for a lot of reasons, but it sometimes, well, most of the time relates to their learning history, so their experiences in the past with that. Maybe they were harshly criticized in the past. Maybe having that worksheet was paired with memories of an earache that they've had for going on. So there's different things that can be connected with that activity in the past that lead them to want to avoid or escape it in the future. It doesn't always make sense to us, but the reality is we just need to recognize that that's what they're doing and then come up with ways to address it. The last possible function that we're going to talk about is sensory conditions. So we may have a student who's trying to obtain a sensory condition. So maybe they're trying to access something, like if they're shaking their head back and forth over and over, they may want that stimulation. They're trying to obtain it. They're trying to get this feeling, the sensation that they're desiring. And likewise, if they're avoiding or escaping it, a sensory condition, they may, again, run out of a room if something is perceived as too loud, even though we may not think it's very loud. To that student, it is. So it's this one is hard, I think, to recognize in a school setting. Just with everything going on, it's hard to pinpoint what exactly, of our five senses is being addressed through this obtain or avoid escape situation. But it's always something to be thinking about. Sometimes we're more sensitive to, say, sound on a particular day. And so you might have a student who had a rough morning, didn't sleep well, maybe fought with mom or dad, maybe forgot their homework, and now the classroom's going to be a little bit louder because of the party that they're having. And maybe that student's tolerance for that loud noise is lowered that day because of those other conditions that were happening going into that day. And so we might see that student try to avoid or escape that sound. Likewise, the same with obtain sensory conditions. Sometimes we have students who, if they're stressed, they're trying to get those things to chew or move their body. And so we have some other things going on, and now they're trying to access this to soothe themselves. So why is it important to understand these functions of behavior? they tell us what a child is trying to obtain or avoid or escape. And I didn't want to get too deep into avoid escape differences, but if you're curious, avoid is basically if you haven't necessarily encountered the aversive stimuli yet, but you're going to do something so that you don't end up encountering it at all. So if you were coming down your sidewalk and you saw a neighbor coming the other way on the same sidewalk towards you that you prefer not to talk to, you may cross the street before you ever encounter them in order to avoid that interaction. Escape is once the interaction has happened. So the aversive stimuli is happening, and now you're trying to get away from it. So if you maybe don't see that neighbor up the way and you run into them and now you have to talk, you might try to escape that situation by saying, oh, I have something on the stove, or I have a phone call to go make. You might try to escape that way. So if you're curious about the difference between the two, there you go. The other thing about knowing the function is it allows us to program accordingly. So if we want to make a difference in that behavior, let's say that behavior is causing a problem in the student's learning or in others' learning by maybe they're running out of the room, or maybe their desire to chew things has now crossed over into chewing everything in their desk, and it's not really working well for them. And so we kind of want to program for those things and make a change in the behavior. So the way we do that is we try to provide access to the things they want to obtain. So remember on this chart, if they're trying to obtain attention, tangibles, or sensory conditions, we're going to try to provide those things that they want by engaging in appropriate behaviors. So that's where token boards often come in is, hey, you can chew on things, you can go take a running break, you can leave the classroom and take a breather. These are all things that you can do, but you're going to do it by first engaging in some sort of appropriate behavior. And sometimes this is where we get a little bit mixed up, as we might be expecting too much of that appropriate behavior display in order to access those things that they're trying to obtain. So it's always good to start small. So if I have that student who's really aversive, we're talking about access. So if I have a student who really wants their iPad and it's just their whole focus and they're very energized by that, I may have them complete half a worksheet, then iPad, then complete the other half of a worksheet, then iPad. That might be your place to start. Other times they could complete an assignment or a section of a class period before accessing it. And that's where those tokens come into play. And make sure that you're rewarding, like, hey, I noticed that you're on task and you're working towards that iPad each time they get a token. Another strategy is, if you see here again, so if they're avoiding or escaping attention, tangibles, or sensory conditions, then we want to provide escape to those things that they want to escape by engaging in appropriate behaviors. So if I have a student trying to escape that worksheet, I may insist that maybe what we've practiced and pre-taught ahead of time is that they need to start their worksheet, and then they can ask for a break. And then we can go take a 5-minute break, do a calming tool, and come back. And the point is that there's limits on that break. There's expectations for where, when, how, what are they doing to calm? Usually a time limit set. And then the idea is that they come back to that task while having been able to calm down. That's the important thing, is that they're coming back to the task. So if we look again, so if they're escaping a particular activity, that fits into that example. If they're escaping a sensory condition, it could be that some sort of easy modification's easy, like maybe wearing headphones or taking some breaks from the environment that's too loud. There's lots of things that we can do to provide that appropriate escape for engaging in our expectations. So when we think about when should an FBA be conducted, one option that is new is to do a standalone FBA. It allows for that assessment to be done without opening up the full evaluation, the full special education evaluation process. And there are some fact sheets on MDE that help answer some of the common questions. Basically, you're writing up an eval plan with just that assessment on it, getting signature, and then proceeding with the evaluation piece. It might also be part of an evaluation that you're already doing. So it could be an annual, an initial, and maybe you're opening this evaluation because there's been changes. It's always important to consider if you're seeing any types of behaviors, and they don't even have to be kicking or hitting or yelling. They could be behaviors like picking or toileting or maybe some other thing that's really maladaptive that you wouldn't often think of as a problem behavior. You might want to include that FBA in your assessment or your evaluation plan. It's not limited to EBD criteria. If you have a vision impaired student with a behavior that you're seeing, then you can do an FBA as part of that. And it's not about switching their criteria to EBD. It's just about doing a full evaluation and alongside that, looking at those behaviors that we want to examine further and take that opportunity to do so. So always be thinking, does that need to be included? And you don't have to be afraid if you've never done one before or have done very few and you're not confident. We are seeing more and more students in the DCD population, in the ASD population, other types of disabilities that maybe the case managers or those working in with those populations haven't done a lot of FBAs, and that's okay. The behavior analysts with the co-op are happy to help you and help you teach you that process of the evaluation. Sometimes people think, oh, it's too much work. But once you get going, it's really pretty easy. And it teaches you to have an eye on function, which is just a really great thing to have all the time anyway. We always talk about in our CPI training, if you've done that, how we want to match our response to what we're seeing so that we're proportionate and our response will have a de-escalating effect on a kiddo. Kind of the same thing here. We want to know what the function is so that in a systematic way, so that we can respond appropriately. So if the student is seeking attention, we're not trying to give them the iPad, right? We're meeting them with attention for appropriate behavior. We don't want to miss the mark. We want to give them what they need in a healthy way. And then through time, that should reduce trying to access what they want in unhealthy ways. Well, I want to thank you for your time. Again, I'm Courtney Varell. Let me know if you have any questions, and I look forward to seeing you guys soon. And you can go ahead and ask about parts 2 through 4 for this series as well. Thanks, guys.